Welcome to One Chapter, One Thought. I'm Pastor Chris from Lincroft Bible Church in New Jersey. And every weekday I read one chapter of the New Testament and offer one brief devotional thought. Today's reading is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16. The Pharisees and Sadducees came up to Jesus, testing him, and they asked him to show them a sign from heaven. But he replied to them, "When it is evening, you say, 'It'll be fair weather, for the sky is red.' In the morning, there will be a storm today, for the sky is red and threatening. Do you know how to discern the appearance of the sky, but can't discern the signs of the times? An evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and a sign will not be given except the sign of Jonah." And he left them and went away. And the disciples came to the other side of the sea, but they had forgotten to bring any bread. Jesus said to him, "Watch out, and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees." They began to discuss this among themselves, saying, "He said that because we did not bring any bread." But Jesus, aware of this, said, "You men of little faith, why do you discuss among yourselves that you have no bread? Do you not yet understand or remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many baskets full we picked up? Or the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many large baskets full you picked up? How is it that you do not understand that I do not speak to you concerning bread? But beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees." Then they understood that he did not say beware of the leaven of the bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he was asking his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, and others Elijah, but still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus said to him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. I also say to you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven." Then he warned his disciples they should tell no one that he was the Christ. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed and be raised up on the 3rd day. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "God forbid it, Lord. This shall never happen to you." But Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are not setting your mind on God's interests, but man's." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. And whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? For what will a man give in exchange for his own soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and will repay every man according to his deeds. Truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." One thought. The life of faith is complicated. The path of discipleship is not smooth. Look at Peter. Back in chapter 14, Peter has bold faith, steps out on the water, sees the storm, takes his eyes off Jesus, begins to sink. Some ways Peter is incredibly bold and trusting, and then he fails. Here, we see the same duality within Peter. First, he confesses that Jesus is the Christ in 16:16. And because he confesses Jesus as the Christ, he receives a blessing. Jesus says that this was not revealed to him by flesh and blood, meaning it didn't come from a human, but God revealed the identity of Jesus to Peter, and that's a blessing. And then he said, "On this rock I will build my church." Peter here is called the Rock. Now, again, a lot of people in our Protestant religious tradition have struggled with this because the Roman Catholic Church says, "See, look, Peter's the Rock. He was like the first pope, and our leadership is all descended from Peter," and da-da-da-da-da. And, sometimes we get unnerved by thinking that Peter is the Rock. I don't think we have to go down the whole pope route like Catholicism does. I don't think that reading really stands up with the New Testament. I think merely what Jesus is saying is like, look, man, you're going to be the starting point. And that's exactly what is fulfilled in Acts chapter 2. It is Peter that is filled with the Holy Spirit and then preaches the gospel, and 3,000 people get saved. And in a sense, then the church is born that day. So Peter has this immense blessing. He's being used as this foundational piece to get the church started. And then the blessing goes further. Not only is he called the Rock, but Peter is given the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And he has this power to bind and loose. And so what does this mean? What do these keys mean, right? Well, if you think about just holding, the dungeon master with the big key ring full of keys, number one, it symbolizes authority, right? So there's like this certain authority, you open and shut doors, but also there's responsibility. Peter is now given charge to the kind of the opening and closing of the entrance of the kingdom of heaven. And how does that come about? How is the kingdom of heaven opened to people? It's through the preaching of the gospel. So I think what Jesus is saying here is like, Peter, you need to be faithful. And as you preach the gospel, it has an effect. And for some, this effect is positive. The preaching of the gospel brings new life to them. God opens their hearts and they respond in faith. But then, as we've seen with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, with the preaching of the gospel, some people, they harden their hearts against it. They don't want anything to do with it. And so Peter can open the way to the kingdom as he fulfills his responsibility to preach the gospel. But soon after, right, this great blessing and this great responsibility is given to Peter, we see his downfall. Jesus begins saying, hey, I got to go to Jerusalem to die to save everyone. And then Peter's like, you're never going to do it, Lord. Like, I'm not going to let you. Because Peter still thinks that, I think probably mixed in here, that Jesus is going to bring like a political kingdom back to Israel. He wants Jesus to kind of be this conquering hero, not a suffering servant who dies for the sins of the world. And I think like what Peter implicitly is doing here, right, when he gets after Jesus, he's shutting the door of the kingdom to people, because he's saying like, I'm going to keep you from doing what you need to do to open the door, which is die. So it's a huge failure on his part. He's the rock. He has the responsibility of the keys, and he blows it. But eventually, he is restored. And eventually, we see him fulfilling his purpose. Acts chapter 2 preaches the gospel. He's the rock. He's the start of the church in a sense. Fulfills his responsibility. Just like Peter, we're going to have moments of great faith. And then we'll have moments of failure. It's complicated. Discipleship involves recognizing our weaknesses, learning from them, and always turning back to God. And through it all, Jesus remains patient with us. He's committed to us. Even when we fail, Christ is shaping us into the disciples he calls us to be. Just like he did with Peter. End of episode.